Okay, our next speaker is our own Chiara Herzog. She will be one of the heavy lifters of this conference, so please give her a round of applause. She will be talking about the implementation of standards for the biomarkers of aging in the clinical context.
Great. So good morning, everyone. I have transitioned from a looming presence at the side of the stage to a speaker, so hopefully I won't go over time so I get kicked out. I'm really pleased to talk about clinical translation of biomarkers of aging today and some of the work that we've been doing as part of the consortium as well. So I'd like to start my talk with this tool that we all know. In cardiovascular disease, it's well established that blood pressure is a risk factor, but we can measure it with a relatively simple tool, take targeted preventive steps, and then using the same tool, measure again whether this was effective. And in an ideal world, this is really what we want for a clinical biomarker of aging as well, having something which changing would also predict a change in an outcome for a clinically validated surrogate endpoint. And today I really want to talk about, are we there yet? Or maybe if not, what do we need to do to get there? Obviously, there has been a tremendous amount of development and discovery in the space of biomarkers of aging. I think the fact that we're all in this room today is the best proof of that. However, I would argue there's a few outstanding barriers that we really have to address before these can make it to a routine practice. We don't know what biomarker to use and when, how to validate them, how to fairly compare them, and how to implement them in current clinical healthcare and research. As part of the consortium, we're tackling multiple of these and other challenges, and in talks by Dr. Mokri, Seth Paulson, or Dr. Buganik, you will or have already learned some of our efforts. In my talk, I'd like to hone in a little bit more on the implementation part and specifically focus on two challenges that we identified in our most recent manuscript that was actually already featured today. So thanks again for sharing this work. So one of the challenges is that currently most biomarkers that we have are not really linked to any mechanistic insight or intervention. And typically in medicine, this is what you want. So we want to have a link to actionable insights. And I want to share a little bit more of work that I've been doing in Austria to develop clinical intervention studies to learn more about these biomarkers. Another thing is that we really identified a gap between biomarker developers and researchers and clinicians because we're doing our own things and clinicians are obviously very busy with routine clinical healthcare, but how can we bridge that gap? And as part of the consortium, we're working on basically bridging that gap with a clinical survey, but also trying to implement standards that could foster this interaction a bit better. So let's talk about what I have termed Austrian studies, which sounds a bit weird, but basically we're an institute that is interested in prevention, primarily for cancer, but obviously aging is a huge factor in cancer and a very exciting thing to study. There's many biomarkers, but they're not very well characterized, in particularly over the course of interventions. So we don't really know their dynamics. We also don't know usually what do changes in typical omic biomarkers predict in terms of clinical changes. For many interventions that we're interested in studying, for instance, lifestyle interventions, we don't really know actually what's happening in healthy humans when they undergo such interventions. And we don't know whether healthy individuals are even interested in participating in this. And over the last 4 years, we've established a prevention research clinic where we've studied several intervention studies with almost 1,000 individuals by now. And I'd like to introduce them very briefly today. So the first study I've actually already introduced in my flash talk yesterday, and I also have a poster on it, so I don't want to dwell on it too much because we have very limited time. But we did very deep multi-omic profiling alongside clinical changes over 6 months of an intervention, which allows us to link changes in biomarkers to changes in clinical features, importantly, interpretable changes. For instance, we found a significant increase in VO2 max after 6 months of intermittent fasting, and we are now working to kind of see which biomarkers would be associated or predictive with that. Building on a broader population, we then expanded this to a study with over 600 individuals that we recruited, aged 18 to 75, so very broad. We had a 2-month no intervention blinded run-in phase, so participants were simply saying, okay, I want to participate, and in 2 months they would come back and we would tell them, please do intermittent fasting, exercise, mental resilience, or a combination thereof. And I'm mentioning this kind of blinded intervention free run-in phase because actually when you look at questionnaire-based data of stress or sleep quality, as well as a few other biological changes I'm not showing here, you see even during this intervention-free period, you already see improvements. So I think this is something we shouldn't underestimate, that participating in such interventions studies will modify behavior and health. This is a very small and messy diagram of all of the data and samples that we've generated. I've only made this figure 2 days ago, so still working on like improving that, but we are basically pending funding to do multi-omics on this very exciting intervention study of over 600 people. And lastly, I wanted to introduce a slightly different study that was mainly focused on smoking cessation, where we explored the impact of providing personalized biofeedback during the course of smoking cessation. So this was based on biomarkers that we described earlier this year, and we randomized participants to either receive this biofeedback or not, and are now in the process of analyzing whether this would change behavior or make it more sustainable smoking cessation. So surprisingly, the biomarkers actually did work very well, and we're currently reporting these findings. This is in German, so probably cryptic for most of you, but I just thought I'd include a template report. So ultimately, it's my vision that we can combine all of these data and samples and insights into what I call the lifestyle atlas that should provide a very systemic overview of what's happening to the human body over the course of such interventions. But more excitingly for me, this multi-omic alongside clinical data will hopefully allow us to better understand what are diverse biomarkers capturing and how could we move them forward. And as putting it as Professor Meyer showed yesterday, we want to build a full picture. I found this Lego picture of Innsbruck. It's a very nice town and you should visit if you get the chance. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about efforts from the consortium, one of which is the longevity study that we actually launched 2 days ago. So we have a website, and I'd also like to thank all of the donors who have given us their time and blood, very apt for Halloween. But we want to make this a longitudinal study to focus on multi-omics and aging biomarkers. But beyond being a study in its own right, what we really want to do with this study is to build resources and standards for the community that will not only us enable to study multi-omics, but also enable decentralized future research. So we have a great panel of experts, collaborators, and volunteers that have been helping us with this. And on our website, you will find protocols, consent forms, a minimum core questionnaire for longevity studies capturing a lot of important aspects, minimum recommended functional tests, as well as recruitment resources. So really kind of a starter pack for a longevity study. And we hope that people can use these tools to start their own studies. We're also very interested in working with clinicians. To really understand what clinicians need and what they know about biomarkers, we've developed a survey. I'll just go over this very briefly. We have a QR code. I don't have a lot of time to show it, so if you're interested, please do reach out. We're specifically interested in working with medical doctors to gather their opinions and basically start initiating this discussion. Lastly, just wanted to say, we all know that I think we need to transition from a very disease-centric system to a healthcare system promoting prevention. To do so, we need to validate biomarkers and better understand what they're trying to tell us and how we can actually improve aging with them. I think open and shared data will be a pivotal step for that. And hopefully with those tools in hand, we can develop, implement, and identify meaningful therapies. I'd like to thank my team in Austria, my mentor and our funders, the amazing Biomarkers of Aging Consortium team, a non-exhaustive list of all of the amazing people we're working with. And here are my contact details. I'll actually be joining King's College London as of next week. I'm working on unlocking the epigenetic code and developing my own research program. So if you're interested in any of this work, please do reach out. And yeah, sorry for going over time.